right, and we're at 11:01, so we're going to go ahead and start to roll forward. So again, welcome to today's webinar where we're going to be sharing tips for improving employee morale. Again, such an important topic as we are sheltering in place, readjusting our lives to what might be our new normal, thinking about how that new normal really affects our day-to-day, our relationships, how we feel connected at work, and how we ultimately get work done. So a quick introduction, we're going to roll through our speakers. We'll start with Amy. Amy, tell us a little bit about your role, what your company does, and what you're excited to share with everyone today.
Thanks, Morgan. Hello, everyone. I'm Amy Roy. I'm based out of my home office right now in New Jersey, normally working in New York City, and I'm the Chief People Officer at Namely. Namely is an HR technology company, and I'm excited to be part of this webinar because I think there's a lot of information and a lot of talk about employee morale and how you can make a difference. But I'm excited about the framework we've put together to think about it in slightly a different way than some of the other ways I've seen it presented. So hope you feel the same way.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy, and welcome to Chris.
Thank you, everybody. My name's Chris Good. I'm the creative director at One Workplace. We're an interior solution company based here in the San Francisco Bay Area. As an interior designer, I've always tried to shape space that has a positive impact on people, culture, and human relationships. Today's conversation is really meaningful to me because I'm not only trying to help our customers navigate this new normal, but also doing so for our own organization and my own team, a group of really special and incredible people who are being impacted by this right now in very many different and meaningful ways. So this issue of morale and purpose are important for me, and I'm super excited to be a part of this conversation. So thank you for having me on.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. And next up, we have Shannon. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferguson, and I am the head of people at Blueboard. So I work closely with Morgan, and I'm so excited to be sharing the screen today with Chris and Amy. I think, we are all just really passionate about thinking about all of the different ways that people are impacted by the things that are going on around them. And I'm really excited to talk to all of you and explore interesting new ways of looking at employee morale during this webinar today.
Great, Shannon, thank you so much. And for those I haven't met yet, we've done quite a few webinars, so it might be a familiar face. Thanks for everyone who's joining and staying in touch with us while we've been increasing our webinar frequency. There's so much to talk about, of course, and we've loved having a host of amazing speakers join us over the last few weeks. I run our marketing team at Blueboard, and as Shannon mentioned, we're in the recognition space, really focused on ways to help employees stay connected to their managers, to build those strong relationships, which is such a big piece of morale. And we'll be talking more about that as we jump in. So a quick agenda for us and a few housekeeping items that we'll walk through. We just got through welcome and intros, so we've checked number 1 off our list. We'll then go through a really awesome framework that Chris has actually put together around what our new hierarchy of needs is, adopted through Maslow's influence as we've been affected by COVID-19. So we'll cover that first, and then we'll break down the 5 areas of focus through this hierarchy with tips along the way for building morale, as well as a look at the real people programs that our wonderful speakers have rolled out across their organizations. And then lastly, Amy will be taking us through really how to understand monitoring morale, what tips and practices and surveys they've been running through at Namely to really understand where people are at, what their comfort level is, if they're feeling engaged and still connected through the workplace. So that'll be our agenda today. We will have time at the end, hopefully, for Q&A. So what we'll do is gather that actually through the chat as well as through the Q&A tool. So if you take a look at your Zoom browser bar, you'll see Q&A, which you can ask questions along the way, and we'll cover those at the end. You can also click on the 3 dots near more. That will open your chat window. And we love the collaboration that comes through the audience. We've just passed our 500 attendee mark, which means there's a lot of smart people on the line with us. You have wonderful ideas and programs that you're already rolling out. So we encourage you to share those ideas along the way by toggling to share that message with all panelists and attendees. You'll see that screenshot here. So your choice, you can either talk to our group directly on screen, or you can share your ideas more broadly with the group today. Our lines will be muted, so please leverage the Q&A and the chat along the way. Also, we'll be recording this, so if you do need to drop off at the end for any reason, we will be sharing a recording and full recap next week on the Blueboard blog. And we'll also be sharing the SHRM PDC code at the end for anyone getting their professional development credits. So I think that should be it. We'll jump in and kick it over to Chris, who's going to walk us through this new hierarchy of needs. Feel free to take it away.
Morgan, well, thank you so much. And yeah, perfect. You brought up the slide. So I'm sure everyone on the call is feeling and experiencing this right now. You know, the work experience around us is rapidly changing. And at the moment, all of us are responding to some very basic human needs. We're creating places for our teams to return that are safe. But what do we do next? This is a question I know we are all asking. It's certainly one my organization's been asking, ourselves and asking me. And so this framework really fell into place fairly intuitively in the first few weeks of the pandemic, as we were being asked how we could help our customers transition from this very reactionary place that we find ourselves right now into something new, into steps that would take us to the near and into the far, from a very reactionary mode to a place of restructuring and reconfiguring, and ultimately to an opportunity to rethink everything we know about work. But how do we get there? How do we get to step 2? How do we get beyond that? And it begins with addressing our basic physiological and psychological needs. The places we work can't keep us healthy and safe. If they can't keep us healthy and safe, they're failing their primary purpose, which is to serve people. That's why buildings exist. That's why our workplaces exist, for us. And once that's been achieved, once we get the workplace back to being a safe and healthy place, we can begin sharing experiences again. And those experiences might be physical, the way they used to be, or they might be digital, the way we're doing them right now, virtual. And once we're having those virtual experiences, those physical experiences, we can then move on to a place where our teams can regain confidence in themselves, in what they do. Their contribution to the organization will go back to maybe the place it used to be. And eventually, hopefully, we can all begin thinking about what that transformation looks like, what that next step is that's completely new and unexpected. But we can't jump to the end. We can't just go from right here, right now, knock over the house of cards and assume that we can just go straight to a retransformation of everything we do. We have to set a foundation. We've got to get the steps in place. We've got to kind of move through these layers. It's a process. And so we've been sharing this with our customers, helping them get through those steps. And so far, it's been really well received. And I look forward to talking more about it today and hearing more about how this group is moving themselves through it. So thank you.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you so much for that intro. We're going to start breaking down each step of this hierarchy, starting from the bottom and working our way up, just like Chris mentioned. I'm going to pass it over to Shannon, who's going to take us through health and wellness. Take it away.
Thanks, Morgan, and also thanks, Chris. I think, just to start things off, it's really important to remember that in the framework that Chris has shown, we're really thinking about our employees as whole beings, right? It's not just a worker coming to work. It's a person with a lot of things going on in their lives. And if you sort of are able as an HR leader or as a people and culture leader to hold that perspective in your mind, then Chris's framework starts to really provide you all of this excellent insight in how you can begin to take action to touch on all of those different parts of a person's existence. So as Morgan said, starting at the bottom is key, because you have to make sure that you have the foundation in place to be able to provide a healthy working environment. And health is the key word there, right? So physiological and psychological health are absolutely clutch to someone being able to do anything else. If you're not feeling well, if you're not feeling, healthy and capable of physically being at work, it's going to be pretty hard to do your work. So as you think about morale, you have to sort of look at that hierarchy and start at the basics. And for us, morale comes from making sure those basics are covered. So as employers, when we take time to tend to all of the needs of our employees, we show that we truly care about them and that we truly value them. And then those employees feel supported. They feel that they can trust their leaders, and that trust leads to engagement and motivation. If you could, yeah, great. So when you're trying to build trust and show support in the area of physiological and psychological health, I think a few tips and inspiration that we have to offer are, number one, talk about it. There's no reason to shy away from a conversation that says your health and your mental health are important, that we as a business need you to feel well to be able to do anything after that. So providing a space and providing a safe, environment for people to acknowledge that health and mental health are important, I think is number one. And then, going beyond that, providing resources. Many of us provide, EAP programs or supplemental mental health in addition to our standard benefits. So making sure your employees know how to access those resources, can find information about them, and can easily sort of unlock tools that will help them maintain their physiological and psychological health, I think is just really key in this area to helping keep morale up. Another tip is expanding wellness, making sure that you are going a little bit above and beyond what the bare minimum is in terms of physiological and psychological health. And we'll share some ideas for that as well. And then specifically to the workplace, as Chris was talking about, you have to recognize that we're in a whole different world these days. And it's incumbent on us as employers to over deliver. We want to make sure that employees are really feeling comfortable, safe, reassured, and that they can trust their employers and their workspace to provide them with what they need to take care of themselves. And also to recognize that many of them have different needs. So we need to be flexible in what we're offering inside of our workplaces. So for some specific examples and tactics about ways that we're bringing it to life, we'll each kind of chip in here with a few examples of what we're up to. At Blueboard, one of the things that we've done is really deliberately offer mental health resources. We have, provided some different programs and partnered with other organizations to offer our team access to counseling, therapy, sleep coaching, things like that. We also are offering PTO for mental health days. If an employee just needs to take a mental health day during this time, we don't need to count that. It feels strange to say, oh, I'm taking vacation when you can't leave your house. So it's okay to say, I need a mental health day. I need to take care of myself today. And we're talking about that and encouraging employees across all of our teams to do so. We're also having some fitness classes led by the team. We get up early in the morning and various different employees coach others in yoga and in HIIT classes. And I think, not only does that contribute to energy and activity, but it also builds community across our team. And finally, we are talking about wellness in our all hands and in our team meetings. We last week, had a conversation about the idea that it's okay to turn your Zoom camera off if you're feeling overwhelmed by the amount of video conferencing you're doing. It's okay to take a little time during the day to read a book related to work instead of being really online. So we just really acknowledged a number of different ways people can take care of their health and mental health. And we had leaders model the ways that they're doing it so that people felt that it was acceptable and appropriate and normalized.
Yeah, and namely, we're doing a number of the same things that Shannon had mentioned. One of the things that we've done a little bit that may be outside of what we would normally do is some parenting classes during pandemics. Making sure that people have the resources not only for their own, for their own health in terms of being able to get out of bed every day sometimes, but also making sure that we acknowledge the fact that people are doing more than what they've been normally doing in a work from home scenario or what they do when they visit our offices. So a lot of components around stress reduction, how to work from home, and including thoughts specifically to give parents the resources that they need during this time. Chris?
The one other thing that I would add from our end is, and there's a really great article on this in the journal this morning, that the more we are now working from our couches and our kitchen tables, it's having a huge negative effect on our physical being. It's not healthy to work that way. And so something we're doing for our employees and for our customers is putting together ergonomic work from home settings with the understanding that everyone's homes, can only accommodate so much furniture, and that has to fit into, someone's lifestyle, into the space they have available. But regardless of what that thing is and what we help craft for that customer or for that individual home, it has to be something that serves our ergonomic needs so that we aren't straining our necks and our backs every single day as we work from home.
Great, thanks for all those suggestions. I think we'll pass it off to Amy to talk a little bit more about safety and security now.
Thanks, Shannon. So just like your physical health is important, that you can get out of bed every day, and of course your mental health as well, security and safety is equally, or if you will, after you get past your own personal feeling that you can get out of bed, do you feel that you're coming to a safe place? And that comes into safety both from a physical perspective. Do I have the right controls when I enter the building? Is the elevator a safe elevator? For example, if I was actually back in my office, do I sit in a safe chair? But also from an emotional perspective, do I trust that the coworkers I have around me are actually going to be respectful of me as a person? Do I walk into the office and feel a level of anxiety just because of a physical space that I'm in, or even within my home space? And so, people want to know that their organization is not only keeping track of them from a health perspective, but also from a safety perspective, and making sure that they're connected in that way. Morgan? So in terms of tips, how can people feel safe? Well, communication is a big key of people feeling safe, that people understand what's going on, what's happening within their business, that there's not something that they, that's out there that could come and, surprise them in any way. And to do that, as part of your communication, you have to engage your key stakeholders and make sure that they're really on top of understanding that people are scared right now. They've seen a lot on TV every day. Lately, it seems like there's even something new that's coming up, through this virus, new side effects or new ways that it's coming out and displaying itself. And so the last thing they need is to feel unsafe at work. And that's through whether it be engaging your key stakeholders in the messaging that they're bringing, that you are bringing people together either in large or small groups, that your leaders are continuing to push that message down through the organization. And then of course, if you're physically together, that you are protecting each other from a transmission perspective, whether that's being in providing PPE, whether that's in related to how many people are allowed in an elevator, whether that's around how people are physically sitting next to each other in small conference rooms, or maybe they're not. And I know a number of us, even just within the panel, have been talking about returning to work. And I think as we get closer to really bringing people back, and I'm sure all of you on the phone are in a variety of states of that decision-making process, these physical things have to get taken care of before we're going to convince anyone to come back into our buildings. And so in terms of some of the ways that we're bringing things to life, we've really done a lot around focusing around communication, and we've been utilizing Slido. For those of you who are not familiar with Slido, it's a tool that allows employees to put in anyone to put in a question and have a moderator respond. And so we've had Slido open for people to just put in questions about how they're feeling, whether it be about the economy, whether it be about our customers, whether it be something that's going on. And our executive team has been answering those. And we also use that as a tool within any all hands meetings that we have, so that people have an opportunity to feel, just like with our Q&A here, that they can ask the question and feel that they'll get a response that'll make them feel a little bit better. We also share those updates in weekly updates. Within our Namely software, we have a news feed. You may have it through an intranet where you can go ahead and post updates. We posted a weekly update just from our CEO to share what's going on. I'll tell you that right now we're back down to about weekly. For most of the last 8 weeks, it's been at least twice, if not Monday, Wednesday, and Friday updates to keep people updated with what's going on, because so much has changed so quickly. And then of course, from a health perspective, whether it be through what you have within your insurance plan, from a telehealth perspective, for both we talked about the health perspective earlier, but there is still a component associated with people feeling safe, and that may mean that they want to turn to their employee assistance program.
Something that we're doing on our end as it relates to the physical workplace, both for ourselves and for others in the in our market, is working with workplace sensors and reservation systems to allow us to know what spaces in our buildings are being used and how often they're being used, so that each night we can flag those places for deep cleaning and make sure that those places get cleaned first and get cleaned the most often, whether that's a desk or a conference room or a space in a cafe. And then reservation systems to give people the assurance that if they are going to come to work, they have a place to come to work that's theirs. Our organization, like many others, actually utilizes a lot of shared space, and that includes individual desks. And if I'm going to wake up in the morning and make the long commute into the city, I want to know that when I get there, I have a desk and it's set aside for me for that whole day. I don't want to make that trip and get there and find out that the space I hoped to use wasn't available. So how do I make sure that that place is set aside for me? It's reserved, it's mine for the time that I need it. And then again, signal to facilities when that time is up, that someone needs to come behind and ensure that place is clean and secure for the next user.
Quick
In
question
addition,
on that, Chris. Sorry, I just wanted to ask. People who are adopting hot desking or the non-dedicated space, are you making recommendations just to kind of forego that or change the policy? Your comment about having that dedicated desk stood out to me, as more and more tech companies especially are adopting the concept of hot desking, which is you have open unclaimed seats that people can jump into at any point throughout the week. Just curious your thoughts there.
I think hot desking is a reality of the world we're in. And in some ways, as counterintuitive as this may sound, in this new world where we're coming to the space and our corporate real estate may now have to serve a lot of other purposes and we're spacing people out, that sharing may actually become more necessary in order to accommodate the numbers of people we have. So in order to do that, you have to find a way to do it safely. Giving people a sense of security and safety and that the space they're going to use is clean is a big piece of it. Then asking for some personal responsibility. We'll talk about this later, but clean in, clean out policies where I clean it for myself when I arrive and I clean it again for the person who's going to follow behind me as part of what's expected of me is critical. So I don't think hot desking is going away, and in some ways I think it may become even more important.
Cool, thanks, Chris. Just to sort of wrap up this slide, we at Blueboard are doing a number of the things that are above that Namely and One Workplace are doing. And I think just one more that I would add is that our founders are really taking time throughout this time to have business data transparency. They are speaking every week to our stats, to our health and wellness as a business, so that people aren't feeling uncertainty or doubt about the business performance when they are, like Amy said, just seeing this sort of flood of news coming from every direction every day and starting to ask questions about, like, well, if that's happening over there, what's happening inside here? So one way that we are helping to provide that sense of security is by having our leaders speak to that more frequently than they otherwise normally, necessarily make those presentations. So I think I'll keep things moving and hand it off to Chris for the next slide about social belongingness and connectedness.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Shannon. So I spoke earlier about, the middle part of that hierarchy is really around this desire of supporting our need to return to social closeness. It's probably the most important step as moving us out of the reactionary mode and back to something new and something meaningful. And at the center of that is our ability to embrace something that's called propinquity. It's this great little highlighted word on the slide there. It's our natural human tendency to develop deep human connections with the people around us. It's as much an act of our own intention as we go look to do that, as it is an act of our biology and our hormones. And so we like to say there's 3 rules of propinquity guiding that experience. Rule 1, that is this rule of proximity. The people you are physically closest to are the ones you're most likely to develop bonds with. In the old workplace, that was easy. We spent a lot of time in close proximity to a lot of people. In our new world, we're gonna have to think differently about this. We may have to manufacture or intentionally create moments of proximity to recreate that experience in new ways. Calls like this, perhaps. In the second rule, is this rule of frequency, that the frequency of those interactions really makes those bonds form more quickly. And then lastly, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory, is this rule of affinity, that the people that we share the most intuitive connection to, that we're most like, we will inevitably form the closest and deepest bonds with. Those are the people we're innately and intuitively drawn to. There's a caution in that, though. We have to be really careful. There is tremendous risk in that sense of affinity in unconscious bias. That we may only care about the people that we are most like and most similar to or have the most connections with. So a challenge for organizations as we promote this act of propinquity is to make absolutely sure that we're also celebrating the differences within our organizations. So what are some things we can do? Some tips and tricks. So one of those is to obviously make the most of our virtual experiences. These experiences are here to stay. We should make sure to not take for granted these moments the way that perhaps we took for granted the act of sitting next to people every single day was. So let's make the most of these. Let's make them fun. Let's make them engaging. Let's make them more than just check-ins on where we can see each other. Find ways to bring our employee experience to each other. We used to bring ourselves to the employee experience. We went to work to have that experience. It's now work's job to bring it to each of us, wherever we are. That's a new way of thinking. It's all new kinds of logistics and costs and expenses and ways of doing that. Something we did the other day was a Zoom happy hour. Everybody's doing those. But we sent out a cheese board to everybody who was on the call in advance. So it arrived that morning. So that we could all share in something human and physical together as part of that experience. We can explore experiential rewards, recognizing the people who are parts of our organization and doing really wonderful and great things. We don't want to forget about them. They are sometimes out of sight, out of mind a little bit more in this virtual world. To prevent that from happening, we're going to celebrate them. And in a super awesome plug for our friends at Blueboard, using experience as a way to do that, sending them things that can make these moments at home even more meaningful, or those moments when we do get away from home even more meaningful. And lastly, this idea of creating affinity teams that I'll talk more about maybe on the next slide. So, and one other thing that was on there that I forgot, which is also the workplace. So our physical workplaces, I have a deep feeling, is going to become about a whole lot more than just desks. The desk was the center of our experience before, and all the other experiences we need sort of centered around that. So we needed other things in addition to our desk. I don't know if we need desks anymore as much as we used to. We need those other experiences. Now that we have home as this alternate place to work, or whatever those other places may be, now those moments when we come together to collaborate and be in proximity with each other, or need to get a better place to focus that's far better than my home is currently, or need a place to just rejuvenate and get into some other place. That need is probably greater than ever. And I really do see all of those experiences now being the real core of why we provide workspace. And the desk will just be this extra thing that happens to be there that maybe is a little bit less important. So thinking about how you'd make your workspace do that. And then the last little note I had on here is related to Spotify DJs for a day, which is really truly an affinity team concept. And it's going out to the team and saying, hey, if someone has an interest in a specific genre of music, you are DJ for the day. Put together a playlist and send it to the whole company. And we're all on Monday going to listen to it for anyone who digs that genre of music. And, have those games with each other. We're trying that internally. It's been a lot of fun. And find ways to celebrate those things that we all share together.
So at Blueboard, we are a company who is really devoted to how powerful experiences can be and how meaningful it is to share experiences with one another. So we've been really mindful and thoughtful about the ways that we can kind of replicate our cultural fabric that is so committed to experiential activities when we're all separate. So we've done a few different things. What you see in the picture on the right is our coworker Gloria. She led a dumpling making class at lunchtime for a bunch of us. So she sent out the grocery list about a week early. And then, over Instagram and Zoom, she taught us all how to make dumplings. And then we were able to, kind of like Chris's cheese board, enjoy those together while also doing this, hands-on activity. We also love that a lot of those sorts of experiences have been employee-led. People on our team have raised their hand and said, let me show you a peek at my life. So a few that I can think of besides dumpling making. We have one person who is really crafty, loves to sew. She held a Mend It Mondays, and we all got together and showed our tips and tricks for stitching up your socks and, fixing a broken zipper and things like that. And then, we've had others related to music, we did a drag queen bingo, which was really fun. So just a lot of things where we can share together and kind of do something in our own space, but show one another while we're doing it. And then the other thing, we are also so passionate about recognizing people and making sure people feel that the things that they do can be celebrated by the team. So we have ramped up our celebrations on Slack. There are a lot of new emojis being added and a lot of enthusiasm for, the little moments throughout the day. And we are kind of, underscoring those by sending surprises in the mail too. We have a few employees who are, continuing to have big things go on in their lives. We have a few Blueboard babies coming soon, and we have people passing their anniversary dates and celebrating tenure, moving, just different things like that. So where we can be thoughtful and send something via USPS to surprise somebody and kind of delight them in their day, we're doing that as well.
Great, thanks, Shannon. I think I saw a question about what are you sending?
Oh, sure. So we have a whole culture crew, and they come up with all sorts of interesting ideas for us. A lot of times it's like a little snack pack that just involves like a variety of different treats, maybe some booze as well, if that is allowed. And also some like crafty activities and things. I know that I got in the mail just last week a nice kit that, and I like art a lot, that included like a Frida Kahlo coloring book and some like Mexican candies and just a variety of other sort of like bright, cheerful things. So it really depends on the person and also, what we can find, but we've been creative and tried to explore what's out there.
That's great. So some of the things that we're doing sounds a little bit similar, but we've created a sanity check channel on Slack. Some of you may use Teams, but it's a channel specifically designed for people to give other people ideas on how they're keeping sane. And sometimes they're jokes, sometimes they're links to cooking classes or to fitness classes or to some great movie that they've seen, but some way to share, in this crazy period, just some ideas. The other things that we're doing, when we started to take a look of moving everyone home is, what do we typically do in the office that we'd want to continue to do in a virtual environment? So we didn't have to think of everything brand new, just how can we think about what we're already doing and translate it into a virtual environment? And one of those things that we have at Namely is a monthly book club. And that book club ties often to what our ERGs are doing. So this month happens to be Asian Pacific Heritage Month. So our book club teamed up with our ERG that supports our Asian Pacific Heritage Group to find a book that could tie together. And to Chris's point about, how you can create unconscious bias by having different groups work together allows you to start to open up that circle a little bit more. So our book club already was meeting. It was actually a wonderful in-office event with a great spread of food, which often drew people. Now we've moved to a happy hour to talk about the book in the same way. And in our offices, we have TV screens that show people people's birthdays and anniversaries. We continue to have those updates both on a daily Slack channel as well as within our HR system that has the capability of automatically posting people's birthdays and anniversaries and allowing people to chime in via Slack, and then continuing to recognize via virtual events within the team itself.
And so,
Yeah, I'm going to pass it to you, Chris.
perfect. I was just going to say that brings us right to the next level of confidence and contribution. And, you know, once we are having those social engagements together, we're building those relationships with each other once again, there's still going to be a tremendous amount of uncertainty in our situation. And the only way to overcome that is by gaining confidence and trust in ourselves and in the institutions around us, our own organizations and political systems and the healthcare systems that will support us. Confidence takes time, and it requires, you know, smart and really well communicated ideas and programs to minimize the threats that each of our team members face. And if we're going to operate through that state of fear and worry that Amy was just talking about, you know, we know that in that moment, or in this moment of fear, our employees aren't giving their best work. That moment of stress limits our ability to think creatively or to recover and to rejuvenate fully. And so while I know there are certainly those among us who are their best under pressure, that still takes a lot out of us. That's a temporary response. And so we have to make sure that we give our teams something they can trust in and that they can believe in again. And so some things we can do, one that I'm really passionate about is aligning with your purpose. Our organizations exist for a reason. And this is a moment to really double down on what that reason is. Belief in your organization's mission and vision are important, more important now than probably they've ever been, because people are going to be resistant to come back, even once we've done everything else we've talked to get us to this point. But a burning sense of purpose, a burning sense that I have to be there because my work is so important and it's so tied to the things that I do that make the world a better place, that'll drive people to come back together. It'll drive the behaviors that bring us back together. So tell stories about your customers, tell stories about your product, tell stories about your people and how it's affecting and changing lives. Align that purpose with pre-existing internal initiatives. If you're already doing something, and I'll talk about this later, something we're doing, find ways to say, well, where does purpose align into that? Where does our mission fit in that? Bake it back in. Share your successes, celebrate everything. Client wins, new hires, celebrate Zoom calls where someone doesn't say, is my camera on? Or can you see me? Anything that's worth celebrating, find a way to recognize it, reward it, and celebrate those moments. And then earlier at the very beginning, I talked a little bit like this idea of taking personal responsibility. There's a bit of a pay it forward moment here, in the sense that if each one of us is doing the things that we need to do to show that we care for the people around us, things as simple as cleaning the space before we leave it, others will see that. It'll be reinforcing for them that not only is the space clean for me, I have confidence to come back because I see others doing the right thing. I'm more likely to do the right thing too. So taking that personal responsibility for ourselves and asking it of others is a critical piece of that. And so one of the things that was on that list of things that we are doing now that I mentioned before was the pre-existing initiatives component. Onboarding is a big part of what we do. We spend a lot of time and effort trying to have a strong and effective onboarding program with my own team. But just a few weeks ago, we stopped and looked at it again and said, well, if we were to do this over again, and we were to tie this back to our reason for being here, what would we do differently? And we instantly realized there was all kinds of things that we should have been doing and weren't. So let's build those into those programs. And then lastly, so we're an Italian family-owned company. So we sort of brand a lot of things with Italian words. And part of our employee recognition across the organization is something we call the Bravo Awards, celebrating individuals who are living our values and our mission. And every quarter, we hammer out 6 people who are just like killing it in 6 different value level places for our organization. We just had that call yesterday, and it was amazing to be on Zoom and to see those people being celebrated in front of 1,000 other people on the call, and to be getting the virtual claps and everything in the Q&A. those moments are important, and they remind us of why we're all here and why we do what we do.
I just love everything Chris is talking about in this section. I think, you know, our values are just, they are what drive us and help us feel really passionate about being at work each day. And it is so important to take this time to sort of look and reevaluate and say, like, are we living them? Are we doing them in new ways that are related to the time that we're in right now? So I just, everything you talked about, awesome. And the couple ways that we're bringing this sort of thinking to life at Blueboard include one, you know, we have OKRs every quarter, and often those OKRs are related to, you know, really sort of standard sort of like sales goals, but business is not as usual right now. And so we've taken this opportunity for our teams to kind of rethink their OKRs this quarter and organize themselves into different sort of groups that are working on special projects and special initiatives that we might otherwise not have the bandwidth to do, or to collaborate with people across the organization that they might not otherwise have done. It's been really cool because one of our values is set ourselves up for success. And so we've been able to identify Q2 as this time where we're all really leaning into that value of set ourselves up for success, doing some things we might not have otherwise been doing, but building our company for the future. So just love the way that that has come to life. And then the other one here, lift up, you know, building confidence also involves recognizing people and letting them know that you appreciate what they are bringing to the team, what they're bringing to the table. So we have launched this service basically where you can send a special note to someone else, both you know, inside your company or just somewhere else in your life, to let them know that you really appreciate what they're doing, and that you know, acknowledges their contributions and helps them sort of have pride for what they offer to your team.
Well, both Chris and Shannon covered you're living your values, but I'll give an example of how that's happening here at Namely. So we have a give value that focuses on giving back to each other as well as to the communities where we live and work. And so one of the things that we started to do was look at how can we give back to the communities that are near us. Obviously, we're not all running out to go and volunteer in some of the major areas, you know, especially in some of the cities. But what else could we do? So one of the things we did was our office coordinator volunteered to go into the office and pack up all the food that we have and deliver it to a local hospital. And so once of course that act is great and we took some pictures, but then we were able to post it in our peer recognition feed and share the photos of what's happening. And it just allowed people to chime in and talk about not only the fact that Lewis, our office coordinator, was able to go do that, and yay Lewis, but also that we as a business are giving back, and that food that's sitting around in an office that's not going to be reopened for a long period of time isn't going to waste, and that it's also helping our healthcare workers. We also found some local hospitals and through an online service, we're able to, you know, set a dollar amount and have meals sent to those hospitals directly, so that we could also recognize, you know, from a financial perspective that as a business to give back. And then we also partnered with a company called Dreammaker that allowed employees to log in and choose a family and give back. So again, all just supporting our values. We're not able necessarily to, we're of course able to give of each other with being able to help each other through this process, but also work from home. And that comes from just the fact that it's our value. It may not be a value in your organization, but find one that is and work towards fulfilling it in that way, and allows people pulling it together. We also have a newsfeed and appreciation directly within our software itself. And you can see the picture on the other side was from one of our employees who's recently back from leave of absence because she delivered a new Namely employee to the world. And so you can see that it allowed, that it just not only allows you to share good news and allow people to chime in and of course recognize our new Namely baby, but also allow her as a returning person to work to be able to recognize and commend all the efforts that have been going on while she was on her leave of absence.
I think this one's me again, and I just want to, shout out Amy. I love all those giving initiatives. I think it's really, really cool to see and hear how Namely is looking outward and not only focused inward. That it's just a beautiful thing when a company is able to do that, particularly in this time. So major shout out and kudos to you. It's inspiring for getting started on this slide. So inspiration and transformation, we're really kind of at the top of the pyramid that we've been talking about now. You've covered all of these other bases and it's time to grow. And I think, this is a really unique period of time where people do have more sort of personal bandwidth potentially to reflect and to think about what it is that they want and need and what their goals are, and really consider how they might get there to have the life or the job or the particular role in an organization that they want. So I think it's important to as you think through morale, consider, how do you not just think about morale for today, for the present moment, but also think about morale as related to achieving future goals, achieving things that you want to accomplish later on down the road. So I think, with that in mind, it's just so important to remember that, when we have something to work toward, we feel really motivated. We're likely to, put the effort in, to put the time in when there's something that we can see off in the distance. So helping people identify those opportunities and creating space for them to work on achieving those things. And then even more importantly, maybe is to share that process with other people can really lead to great morale and also lead to ultimate, inspiration for transformation over time. So a few tips on how to get there. One is creating opportunities for new leaders. This is a time, and you can do this anytime, but specifically throughout this period, where if you have a little bit, more play in the day, you may be able to launch some new initiatives that allow new leaders to emerge. Put people in positions where they are trying on some new hats, trying on some new roles, and testing out maybe what they're really good at, exploring their strengths. I think that as organizations, we, always hope to do this through our learning and development initiatives, but sometimes things are so busy that you don't have time to. So this is just a good thing to have in your pocket right now. In addition, sharing new perspectives, matching different collaborators with one another, and building space for mentoring relationships to develop. Not everybody knows how to, sort of knock on the figurative door on Slack and talk to somebody that they don't already know. So you may have to put groups together and say, hey, I'd like you to work together on this, or share ideas, or I think this would be an interesting core team to bring their perspectives to a particular challenge you're facing. That allows and cultivates relationships that might otherwise not be built. And those relationships often lead to motivation or inspiration for future goals. As we talked about in the last section, returning to your values, I think, can be really important. If you're kind of grappling with what should I work on, or what should I think about doing next, or like what are some ways for me to grow, returning to the values and considering how they relate to bigger goals down the line can be really useful. And finally, providing resources and modeling development. Everyone has the capacity to be a learner, but not everybody has the time and the energy to figure out how to get it done. And so if you make it easy, if you say, hey, we've got open access to this online learning platform, or oh, hey, here is a sample career path, or oh, here's a person who was interested in this area, worked with this mentor, and now took this next step. People start to see themselves in those examples, and they start to unlock these opportunities for themselves. So if your morale is sort of dipping and people are kind of like, how do I stay focused right now? Some of these may provide some guardrails to help them kind of get on a path toward motivation or toward transformation for whatever comes next after this strange period of time that we're in. Next slide, please. So just to, put a finer point on it, a couple of the ways that we are doing it at Blueboard, one of our leaders created a mentoring program for folks on her team that had just really strong potential. And she spoke to some other senior leaders in the organization and spoke to those people and sort of matched us together and created a process for us to go through where we get to know each other and then we work on achieving specific goals. And it's just been really lovely and was something that was really homegrown, but I think has been inspiring inside the organization. The second one that we've done is, we have made some cost cuts during this time. We want to make sure that we're controlling our spend. And yet we expressed to the team that the L&D budget, the learning and development budget, it is unlocked fully. We still want people to take time to develop and to grow and seek out new information to continue to advance their skills. I think that was a really values-based decision for our team, related to that goal of setting ourselves up for success. And I sort of already talked about the other one, the reinforcing our values. So I'll hand it off to Chris.
Well, something that is important for us as we celebrate sort of moving on to the next future is celebrating what got us to here. And so finding times to talk to our founders and do fireside chats with the leaders who made us who we are has been an awesome moment for us. We've been baking it into weekly and monthly meetings so that is happening as we begin to explore where else we might go. And then as far as the where else we might go component, Shannon mentioned earlier in her conversation around this idea of challenging the organization to do things differently, building teams and throwing those teams in challenges. That's something we've been doing internally as well. How can we innovate? Who's willing to volunteer to take on a new initiative, to explore some new aspect of where we might go, and to then celebrate every idea they come up with? And Amy?
That's great. So a couple of things that we've been doing in this area. I'll actually start with the second one first. As Shannon said, they have a mentoring program where leaders are mentoring potentially someone either at the same level or below them. We have a reverse mentor program in place where we have managers who are providing mentorship to our executive team. So each of our executives have currently we're moving to a place where they have at least 2, if not 3, because what we found was when it was a direct one-to-one that might put that person at that lower level feeling a little bit uncomfortable. But when they did it with a couple of friends or even not friends, they met some new people as well as felt that they could share a little bit more openly. And so each of our executives who have volunteered have 2 to 3 people who are typically at a manager, maybe a senior manager level, and they meet on a regular cadence to really give them insight on how they may think about the business a little bit differently, or maybe a part of the business that they're not directly responsible for. And we've gotten some really great feedback from not just the people, who are the reverse mentors, but actually from the executive team in terms of really feeling connected in a different way to someone who wouldn't necessarily, be in their part of the business. And then, more recently, we've gone through a little bit of a transition as well. And we have now opened up from a leadership perspective. While we still have a small core group from a leadership perspective that meets weekly, we've now opened up and have a 2-hour meeting per week with not just our executive team, but for the most part, their one-downs to give business updates and to really come together to solve business problems. With that, we'll move on. So one of the pieces that is important with all of these, and I saw in some of the Q&A, I don't think we'll get to all of it, but there was questions around how do you get people engaged, especially if currently you've gone through a layoff or you're going through some business changes, and how do you keep these people engaged? Well, everyone comes with a different perspective and can't assume just because that's what one person is thinking or even 10 people are thinking that that's really pervasive throughout your organization. So measuring is really key to being able to drive these programs from a success perspective, or really be able to see the impact that they're making in your business. So spending time checking in both at the macro and the micro level is really critical so that you're focusing on the right things. And so some of the ways to do that are through surveys and finding out, giving opportunities for people to give feedback. Sometimes that's in a survey method. Sometimes that's in just a quick one question poll. Maybe if you're using Slido for an all hands meeting, it has the functionality to do a one question poll and do a word cloud to see how people are feeling. But different methods of getting employee feedback. Maybe it's on a formal survey, a poll survey, just ways to get input. So if you're running programs and people are saying, oh, that sounds great, but they're not showing up, well, maybe you need to go dig in behind the scenes as to why they're not showing up. Maybe it's the time of day. Maybe it's associated with the content. More likely, it could be something as simple as you put it, at a time that people who are now working from home with children are either doing schoolwork or nap time, or it's not working across multiple time zones that you're in. So the real key piece is to get an understanding of what you're doing and how it's making the impact. It'll also, if you don't have a current baseline today, will help you think about where you need to go. At Namely, we started working from home, I believe it was March 10th. But on our normal schedule of events, we had our normal pulse survey that we run on a quarterly basis scheduled for May 24th. And we thought for a moment, should we hold off? People just got home. Should we let them adjust and then see how they're feeling? Or let's see how this whole virus thing is going before we ask people how they're doing. For us, we said, no, it's part of our business schedule. This is when we're going to move through it. We ran the survey, and it was really reassuring that for us to know that people felt, we asked questions about how people felt about working from home. Did they have the right tools? Were they set up? Were they able to work effectively? And were they still engaged? And so just being able to ask that, and we're going to ask, we have our all hands call, our monthly all hands call tomorrow. We're going to ask people how they feel continued about how they're working from home. And so if things aren't working for you, or if you're feeling like you don't know what to do, people, I saw this question, so I'll just hit it now. People were asking about morale dropping after layoffs, or how do you incent people when you don't have money to do so when you've just laid a bunch of people off? This is where asking the question can really help give you some insight as to what may motivate them if it can't be, direct cash in their hand right now. And so here's all the pretty much the things that I spoke about. The one piece I will add, though, is that don't just do it at a macro view from a survey perspective. Have your managers pick up the phone and ask people, tap somebody on the shoulder and say virtually, hey, how are you? Check in, see how people are doing. Make sure that as part of your manager's one-on-ones, they're not just going through, did you get this done? Where is this stand? What's going on? Have that moment and really check in and see what's going on.
Awesome. Amy, thank you so much. We're going to do a really quick sponsor intro. Amy, I'd love for you to share a quick blurb about Namely. We're going to also launch a poll. You'll see that on screen now. Awesome. You've heard a little bit about Blueboard, a little bit about Namely as Chris was speaking to our partnership together. As we go through this, feel free to ask for information. That means that our team will follow up with you respectfully and see if you'd like to set some time to learn more about our teams. But we'll go through this quickly so we can also jump into some Q&A. Amy, feel free to take it away.
Sure. So Namely is an HR platform for small and mid-sized companies. It is a full platform from all of your HR needs, benefits, payroll, and recognition. So thanks for including us today.
Yeah, thank you for being a great partner. And a quick overview on Blueboard, I think what's helpful to call out is this notion of connecting teams and really seeing and valuing the work that your employees are doing, especially when we're behind the scenes and especially when you don't have as many office run-ins or as authentic office run-ins as you normally have when working together. So if you're looking for tools to connect teams, to empower managers to see and value their people, we'd love to learn a little bit more about your goals and share more about what our experience menu looks like. So feel free to continue taking the poll. I'm going to jump to our final slide, which is our SHRM PDC for those who are interested. It's 20HC9GW, and we'll paste that into the chat as well. We have just 1 or 2 more minutes, and we had some questions come through, I think consolidating. There were a few specific ones really about this notion of all the virtual happy hours that are happening and how to kind of make sure those are effective. I'll throw out some things to consider and would love to hear from the speakers as you like to comment. We had Rachel ask about, how to make these events more inclusive to parents who obviously have, a hard cutoff at the day. They need to take care of their families. Sarah asked, like, when is it too much celebration? At one point, are we getting into celebration fatigue? And then Deneen asked about how to accommodate introverts. And then Renee was asking about, things that don't have to be on camera because we do have Zoom fatigue. So generally, how do we make these virtual events more inclusive to those who either have families who are over the camera time or who don't want that much like involvement with their coworkers at the end of the day? Anything that's top of mind for our speakers that you'd like to share?
Sure, I can just pop in really quickly. I answered a few of these in the Q&A in text, but just sort of the quick overview of what our approach has been is that we have just really publicly acknowledged that everybody has different needs and that we don't expect everyone to be on the line every time or really at any time. So we've said out loud, it's okay to hop in and hop out on your own time frame. You can come for 10 minutes and then you can leave. You can also come and you can not turn your camera or your microphone on. You can just listen in and sort of, stay on the sidelines. You don't have to be really actively engaged in these, that everyone is welcome to show up, sort of how they are. And then the other thing that I just typed in is that we've also varied the times. We do know that people are in different time zones, and also, some need to make dinner, some need to put a kid to bed, some need to just like close their computer and shut it down. And so we've been more flexible about having these events during the workday at different times during the workday. We really feel that it's valuable to maintain connection. And so it's not just an extracurricular activity. It is work. We know that it's work and we value doing that work during the day. And so we just sort of move them around throughout our calendar and try not to be, really overwhelming about it, but make it, very, self-select in and do what you need to do.
I love Shannon's comment about being a virtual wallflower, because being a passive participant in an experience is still being a participant. And for many of us, we do just want to be there. And so that's really cool. I love that.
Yeah, and I would say you'll start to know if there's too many, if you start to see attendance really start to decline. That'll be a sign that maybe it's just a few too many, and think about maybe staggering them throughout the month instead.
Mm-hmm. On that note, we actually just did a pulse check as well. So on the note of monitoring morale, we've been doing virtual workouts 3 times a week at Blueboard, led by other Blueboarders, which is also a recommendation. HR doesn't need to facilitate every single program. Really encouraging your own employees who have special talents or passions to suggest those and facilitate those on their own, just to draw a more unique crowd or to give them that space to lead. But ultimately, we did a quick survey on Slack yesterday just to understand, time of day preferences, new activities that you might be interested in, and we'll be reformatting that schedule starting next week. And it was really helpful just to see new opinions being shared and being able to put that into practice. Great. We had one additional question just about, I'm going to bring this one forward from, sorry. There was an anonymous question just related to people who are struggling with layoffs, and now there's less people doing more work. This kind of ties into keeping offices tidy and maybe needing to take on more housekeeping duties, or just generally feeling like they're working more than before without compensation changes. And when we're not together in the office, how do you kind of continue to lift those people up who are going above and beyond? So would love to hear from any of the speakers, like any actions that you can recommend or that you might even be taking internally to really empower those people who are stepping forward, taking on maybe a greater share of responsibility if there are headcount changes happening in the background.
Well, I think one of the things that we're looking at is whether or not there's other ways that you can look at compensation or motivation or total rewards package beyond just cash. So a lot of people are taking on new roles, but are there other things that you can do, whether it be through potentially equity, or are there ways to give them, to elevate their status and really make sure that they're feeling recognized, think we talked about a number of ways to make that happen, that they're getting the career coaching maybe that they wouldn't necessarily have before because they weren't elevated to this place. But I actually think it starts with just acknowledgement and really making sure that you're sharing and recognizing that that is what's happening, and that we as a business appreciate it, and that there's a, you know, that this is an evolution and everyone is in it together, but that they're here, that you're, you know, from the top down there to support, and that people know and feel recognized in this period.
I love that question because we're struggling with it right now. I mean, I've asked tremendous things of my team, and I know that what we've asked is a lot. And while I don't have a lot of advice on what we can do, I was hoping to actually learn a lot in that response. The acknowledgement part is so huge, because the one thing we can't do is not recognize those individuals for stepping up and for that contribution and for what they're giving. Because if we do that, then we sacrifice everything that they are giving up in order to help the organization. So that's that. I just want to double down on that and thank Amy for bringing that up. That's awesome.
And if we have time for one more, there were a few questions, just Chris, specifically about your program. And because we just talked about appreciation and acknowledgement, would love to hear a little bit about the Bravo piece, how people maybe, is it peer submitted? How are people kind of using tools to lift up those people they want to acknowledge, or the people that are living your values? And for Amy or Shannon, any other tools that you'd recommend for really acknowledging those people who are going above and beyond would be great, whether it's Slack or in person or other more formal programs. We'll close out with that question.
So our Bravo Awards absolutely are peer nominations. And so it's an open nomination process all year long. But at certain times, we remind the team, hey, make sure you get those in. You make sure you get those in to make sure that we're all thinking of each other and putting those comments in. To some degree, we probably don't have to remind so much because we get so many recommendations of our team members. They want to recognize each other because they know in many ways that each of their own contributions is tied to someone else's contribution. And when they are working really hard, they can immediately see that the people around them are also working really hard, because in order for me to get this done, someone else has to do X down the line, and they want to say thank you. And so that's happening on a regular basis. And then something I think that I really like about the way we present it is when we identify who those people are that we're going to acknowledge, each individual person's manager, essentially makes the presentation to the organization about why this contribution is so important and why we are so thankful. And that's a nice moment between, in front of the whole company, but between those two very closely related people.
I love that. Thank you.
We have something similar. I think the one piece, and I'm sure Chris, you probably already do this, but when we have our peer-to-peer recognition, we also want to recognize how it ties back to who we are as an organization. So when we do something along the lines like Chris does, the recognition has to be acknowledged in terms of our values. So how has this person, I used our give value before, whichever one value you want to feel, that it ties back so that it's not just, hey, you did a great job, congratulations, but because you did a great job, this is how it moves the company forward.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for staying on with us and spending a little bit more time. I know we went slightly over. We'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. We have more webinars planned. Please stay in touch with Blueboard at our resources page, which is blueboard.com/resources. Check out Namely's library for coronavirus support. And we appreciate all the amazing chat that was shared. We'll be including a link to the chat as well as the recording and recap next week on our blog. Everyone will receive an email with that information. So thank you again, everyone, for joining, and huge thanks to our speakers, to Shannon, Chris, and Amy, and Emily, my partner in crime on the Namely side, for pulling this amazing group together. Have an amazing rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you, Morgan.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Take care. Bye.